Hello, everyone, to this third session of the day of our webinar on sustainable finance. Welcome, everyone. We're very excited to start again. I can see we have almost 50 people now joined, and this number has been going up steadily over the past few minutes. So this is wonderful. We are, just a quick thing on our name, the oiConference. The oi is surprising to some people. The oi comes from the fact that we are supported by a student organization focusing on sustainability in management and economics called oikos. And so that's their way to call the conference. And yes, so the purpose of this whole conference is to explore questions of sustainability in the specific field of the finance industry. And what Stephen and I have tried to do is to bring together a diverse set of panels from professionals in the finance industry, from startups to people working in longer established banks or investors, to activists and also academics, to bring together these diverse groups of people to have conversations and to learn and discuss together. So welcome, everyone. The title of this specific session is Planning for a Sustainable Life. And Amy Wijker is going to lead this session and introduce the speakers. I'll say a quick word about Amy and who she is in a moment. First, I will just quickly ask you to, Stephen, if you can put on the poll. We would like you to just fill out quickly where you're from and what your professional background is, and also how much you know about this session's topic, and whether you've heard about the student organization oikos. So just take a moment to fill it in, and we will get started very quickly. Another thing before I start with handing it over to Amy is that we will have a part of the session dedicated to Q&A, which we will crowdsource from you, the participants. So please use our extra app that we're using for this, Slido. You will see the link to this in the comments in a moment. There you can type down your questions and you can vote other people's questions up, so that we will know which are the questions and which of the questions interest most of you. So this will become more important, especially as we get to the later part of this and as we get closer to the Q&A. But you can add your questions and you can vote them up already from now on. This is open. So to get started on this specific, I'll just introduce who Amy is. Amy is a Dutch sustainability enthusiast, both professionally and in her own time. She's working in risk management, and she specializes in non-financial risks, where sustainability is an ever-increasing hot topic. She has a background in sustainable agriculture and renewable energy, but currently she focuses mainly on the regulation, governance, and ethics around sustainability. At the moment, Amy is participating in courses of the sustainability program of the Harvard Extension School. Amy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Oliver. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. I'm impressed, more than 50 people already. I hope maybe some more will join. We will have 3 speakers. As Oliver already told you, the subject of today will be planning for a sustainable life. So all our speakers will in some way be very much involved in how you, as a big investor, or even as just your own pension or your, what is it, 401k as you have in America, on how you could have an impact on sustainability with your day-to-day investments. And yeah, I would like to start to introduce the first one. First one will be James. James is the founder of Envest Asset Management. He has a history actually in environment engineering, but he decided he was going to do something else instead. And he has been involved in investments ever since, but always some link to sustainability. And for the last few years, he's been independent, and he will tell you all about this. So James, please come to the floor.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much. I know I can't see you, but it's great to have a number of people joining us today. Quite a big crowd for this webinar. So yeah, I am the founder of Envest Asset Management. We are a registered independent advisory company. We do financial planning and investment management. for our clients. But what I'd like to do actually is tell you a little bit about my journey. So I actually have a degree in chemical engineering. I went to Villanova University outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And when I was a chemical engineer, I thought that I would end up working for, quite honestly, an oil company. I had interviews with Exxon, I had interviews with Shell. I had interviews with a company called Johnson Matthey, which was really unique. They make fuel cells, which was really cool. But what I want to touch upon is this idea of sustainability, recognizing not only environmental consequences or environmental impact, but social impact as well. And the reason why I bring that up was because when I went to Villanova, one of my best friends, I ran track and cross country there. One of my best friends was also a track and cross country athlete, and his father owns an engineering company. And the reason why I bring this up is because there's this idea of social equity, right? And because I went to Villanova and because I made friendship with this person, I had more, I'll call it higher privilege than probably other people. And the reason why I say that is because my friend's father approached me one day and he said, James, I've always liked you. Why don't you come work for me? And it was the easiest interview I ever had in my life. So I became an environmental engineer. But that's what really set the path forward. So I worked for them for a little while in engineering. And my primary duties was wastewater treatment design. And back then, you know, you wouldn't really think of it as, and maybe today you might not even call it sustainability, but I think we're maturing in terms of our vocabulary and sustainability. And obviously environmental engineering has a high, you know, environmental impact in sustainability. So anyway, I did that for a few years and I decided to get out of the poop business. And I knew that I wanted to get into finance. And how do you do that? Well, I was a career changer. So I went to business school. And you can see I had a lot of fun in business school. I drank beers, I graduated, and I ended up taking a job with an investment bank. But while I was in business school, I thought about impact. And I knew that I wanted to do something. I wasn't really into the mergers and acquisitions thing. What I loved about engineering was things like design and infrastructure. So I ended up joining, most groups call it municipal finance or, you know, tax-free, you know, placement or something like that. I like to call it social infrastructure because that's what I did. So I joined a very big bank. This was back in 2007. Markets were still riding very high. And what we did was we placed bonds for things like airports, roads, public housing, public utilities. And it was good. I mean, I really enjoyed the work. I will say, as an investment banker, a junior banker at that, I worked pretty long hours and I even peaked out, I think I peaked out at 124. So, you know, it was a grind. But unfortunately, 2008 hit and the financial crisis came. And the company that I worked for laid off the entire division of the municipal finance division throughout the entire United States. So then I was like, oh, well, what am I going to do? Well, my boss at the time said, James, why don't you join me at another bank and I'll head up the department and, you know, follow me along. And I kind of said, well, you know what? I'd rather do something a little bit more, I don't want to say impactful, but a little bit different. So what I ended up doing was I ended up finding a job with another bank and working in the renewable energy division. And this was 2008. And I really thought, man, renewable energy is going to be big and it'd be great to get in a little early. So that's what I was. I was a renewable energy banker. And in fact, one of the first deals that I did, I think, just to kind of give you an idea, it was maybe I think it was 2 megawatts and it cost about $5 a watt to get built. And nowadays, you know, you can get things done at under $1 a watt. So, you know, in a decade, you know, prices have come down like 80%, you know, to get things done. So you know, things have changed quite dramatically. So anyway, I ended up working for another bank in renewable energy. And my boss at the time, after working for a few years at the bank, he said, "Hey, James, I'm going to start a private equity fund. Why don't we just do this? And we could do it ourselves." So I said, "Sure, let's do it." So I ended up joining a private equity fund, and we went from 8 employees to about 60. We have a portfolio throughout the United States. And one of the great things about working for this company at the time, and still to this day I'm proud of, is that we went from 8 employees to nearly 60. And a lot of the employees that we had were highly skilled positions. Some of them were operating positions where we had actual operators taking care of our solar, our wind, and other, I'll call it mechanical equipment. And those are highly skilled paid positions. And a lot of these projects that we had in energy utilities were based in, I'll call it underserviced, lower income areas. So we were providing great jobs for that. And then on top of that, the amount of carbon that we displaced from our portfolio was equal to the amount of trees, the area, the size of Connecticut, to give you an idea. So it was very impactful. But after 2016, and after watching corporations increase their CSR, corporate social responsibility, I said, it'd be great. It'd be great to teach people, individuals, families, small businesses, that there's a better way to invest in the public markets. So I was doing private equity, which is private investments in private companies. I said, let's look at what's going on in the public space. Large companies like your IBMs, your Coca-Colas, your Apples, your medium-sized companies, your small companies, those that are publicly traded. Let's take a look at them and see how we can, as individuals, invest in companies like that and support them. So about 2016, I started developing a business plan, and I decided to start this financial advisory company. And that's exactly what we do. We provide financial planning, investment management. We still do alternative investments, which are more ESG specific, more sustainability specific. And we do consulting for our clients. And this is all within the realm of financial sustainability or investment sustainability. But when I define sustainability, my goal is to, one, increase environmental awareness and, decrease, I'll call it, environmental impact. So that's E in the ESG. Same with social. The S in ESG is social. So again, thinking about social equity, social impact, and then G, governance and ESG. And governance is funny, right? Because it's corporate boards, it's your managers, it's making sure that they take into consideration environmental and social impact and applying it. And as a matter of fact, it doesn't even have to be for public corporations, right? It could be for private corporations. It could be for our federal government, which is, everybody knows we're in a pandemic throughout the world. And you really need good governance to help reduce risks. In other words, have really good risk management, protocols. So that's the important thing about ESG. Another common acronym is triple bottom line: people, planet, profits, and you can kind of see how they align. People aligns with social, planet aligns with environmental, and profits align with government. So that's what we do over at Envest. Just talking a little bit more, this is actually a partial snapshot of what we help our clients do. We help our clients diversify their portfolio. We take a look at their risk profile and their ethics. So for example, using one of my clients as an example, we actually took a look at, well, how much were they invested in the energy space? The energy space being oil and gas specifically. And I use a couple programs, Morningstar and Sustainalytics, to help me with this, because I wouldn't be able to do this on my own. It's just, there's so much data and analytics behind this that it'd be hard to do. Well, this particular client was over 7% invested in energy related companies. And he's like, well, I don't want that, that's bad. So we got him down to 1%. And I do want to say that you can get very high specificity, meaning you can get probably zero energy, but it might come as a cost, or might come meaning you might have to pay more in, I'll say, fees from exchange traded funds or mutual fund managers. Or it could come at a cost of, I'll say, diversification as well. And some energy companies, by the way, do clean energy as well. Another metric that's used is fossil fuels. So fossil fuels not only combines your oil and gas companies, but it also combines companies that have a very high portion of their revenue generated from things in the fossil fuel space, like your utilities. Utilities might not be a direct owner of any specific oil and gas, but they purchase it from an oil and gas company, and then they use it to generate revenue. So that's an example. Again, my client was in weapons. We were able to reduce fossil fuels. My client had some exposure to controversial weapons, and we got that down to zero. And then also palm oil over here. Again, some exposure to palm oil, and we know deforestation is absolutely horrendous, right? It's something that we have to try to prevent, and deforestation is often caused by corporations and wanting palm oil. So that's what we try to do. And just to kind of give you the scale of this is not just like a flash in the pan kind of thing. I could talk in more detail about how corporations are doing it, how individuals are doing it, how the market has grown significantly. But I want to also give you like a size and scope, just for, how it pertains to the fossil fuel industry. And you can actually see from divestment in the fossil fuel space over $11 trillion. And it's some of the biggest names that you can think of. Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, $1 trillion fund that's divesting away from fossil fuels. Obviously, that's more of the E side of environmental social governance, but it's still a critical important. There is the University of California, that entire system, their pension fund for the University of California system, they are divesting away from fossil fuels. Not too far away from Harvard is Middlebury College, and they are also divesting away from fossil fuels. And then New York City, part of New York City and their pension funds, they're actually divesting away from fossil fuels. So with that, I'd like to turn it over, but thank you very much for joining us, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Almost on the minute, James. Perfect. For now, I would like to introduce everybody to Will. Will is a responsible investment consultant. His clients are mainly institutional investors, and he tries to help them with the choices that they can make around ESGs, the environment, social, and governance that we already heard James talk about. And he works for Mercer. So, Will, if you're up, you can go.
Fantastic. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. Can everybody hear me all right? I'll look for Stephen to give me the thumbs up. Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much for joining. James, thanks for kicking us off. Amy, thanks for the introduction there. Very excited to be here with you today. And I think James's last slide was very beneficial to explain the kind of work that we do at Mercer. By way of trade, I'm an institutional investment consultant. That sounds like a lot more jargon than it really is. Essentially what it means is that we are a consultant that many of the clients or many of the institutions that James just mentioned, institutions like New York City, the retirement systems, like University of California, these are the types of institutions that hire Mercer as an investment consultant. And so part of my responsibility or part of our responsibility is setting things like a client's asset allocation, helping them with portfolio construction. So deciding what percentage of equities is appropriate, fixed income, hedge funds, alternatives as they become more and more popular, particularly in the endowment and foundation space. About a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, I transitioned roles from being a what I call standard investment consultant to a responsible investment consultant. Mercer has a responsible investment team with 18 full-time employees whose full-time duties it is to support our clients in integrating sustainability and responsible investment initiatives into their investment process and their broader philosophy. A good portion of the work that we do, and really what Mercer was founded on, was retirement plans. And so with that kind of introduction, the purpose of my brief presentation today is really around retirement plan investing related to sustainability and what we would just generally call sustainable retirement investing. The first two slides that you'll see in this presentation are taken from a collaborative initiative between Mercer and the WBCSD, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. We were engaged to support a project and produce two we called toolkits for retirement plan providers to incorporate sustainability into their retirement plans. So what I'd really like to start with here in this presentation is an overview of retirement plans. Frequently, for those who are entering the workforce and even those who are currently in the workforce, the whole idea of retirement plans can be a bit tricky and can be a bit confusing. Two acronyms you may frequently hear are DB and DC. And what do these mean? Defined benefit and defined contribution. The key difference between these two, as we would explain it, really has to do with investment risk. And that's at the top of the page here. And who ultimately takes the investment risk in each of these retirement schemes. As you can see on the left-hand side of the page, within a defined contribution construct, which is also synonymous in the United States with 401k, the employee takes on the investment risk. What that means is essentially that the employee decides on the investment strategies that they choose to invest in, and they take on full risk. Now, when you contribute to your retirement plan, your employer may or may not have what is called the company match, and may or may not match your contributions to that retirement plan. Hence the name a defined contribution plan, because the employer's contribution is defined in that sense. If you put this in parallel to a defined benefit plan, who takes on the investment risk? That's ultimately the employer. The employer is responsible for setting its own asset allocation. Essentially, an employee and an employer pay into a defined contribution plan. So think of it as just allocating money to this big pool of money. And one reason that defined benefit or pension plans have decreased in interest to many corporations and companies is ultimately it lies on their balance sheet as a liability. And this liability can be enormous when you're taking into consideration any sort of M&A activity that may occur, or just generally having a massive liability on your balance sheet. So employers have said, okay, why don't we look into sponsoring a retirement plan or a defined contribution plan, whereby our investments or our participants, our employees who participate in the plan, can opt to decide which investment strategy they would like to choose. And they choose their own asset allocation. They choose the managers that they invest in. Our responsibility is for setting up the plan. So this gets to the structure piece of this slide that you see. So what is the structure of your retirement plan? Ultimately, at the top is really the board of directors. They are the ultimate responsible party in terms of a corporate governance standpoint, ultimately responsible for what this plan looks like oftentimes. But they oftentimes, just as a corporation is run, they really are not the ones doing the day-to-day work. They may be ultimately liable and responsible for, but they aren't doing the day-to-day work. Who is that? As we move down the page there, we see frequently either a CFO, CHRO, Chief Human Resource Officer, or a treasurer frequently sits basically as the committee chair. So the retirement plan committee chair, which then feeds down into a retirement plan committee, which may or may not consist of two committees. It may just be that this third level feeds right into the fifth level, but frequently we do see that they're broken out into an investment committee and then an administrative committee. Now, the investment committee is ultimately tasked with doing the due diligence and saying, okay, which investment managers will we include in our plan? How will our plan be structured? If an employee or a plan participant decides to invest in this 401k plan or defined contribution plan, what will be the default? What's the default option that they automatically get enrolled in? And these are all concerns of the investment committee that need to be determined really from a fiduciary standpoint. Fiduciary essentially meaning who is responsible for setting the guidelines of this plan. And all the way at the bottom, you see here, all the way at the very bottom is your investment consultant. And so that is Mercer. Mercer and a whole host of other investment consultants. Our primary clients are the investment committee of a company. So this gives you a good sense kind of just structurally how this all works, because I think conceptually it's very challenging for folks to really determine how this actually looks. So now that you understand that primarily our client, when we're working with defined contribution plans, our client is the investment committee, and we attend quarterly investment committee meetings with them. You know, the next question is, what does a retirement plan actually look like? So now you understand the governance structure a bit better. What does a retirement plan actually look like? So as you see on this page, this is a standard way of breaking up what a retirement plan looks like. So we break them out into what we call tiers. So tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and tier sometimes 4 over here. But essentially tier 1 is this idea of a QDIA, or a qualified default investment alternative. And this is really if a participant puts, say, $150 into the plan, but doesn't opt for a specific investment strategy, it will go into that default option. And so one of our roles is determining what is that investment option.
Will?
Yes, Emmy.
Could you wrap it up already? We're already reaching our 10 minutes.
Yes, no problem. So one of the key considerations is really around this last tier. So specialty options in terms of sustainability. So are there or are there not sustainable options within your retirement plan? Frequently, this is where you will find them. There are a few ways of implementing it. You know, the first is just a single fund being implemented. And really the primary second is a whole host of options that are implemented across various asset classes. So with that, I think I'll leave it there. And one of the key questions to ask is really, you know, asking your human resource officer or provider, you know, the first question is, do we have a sustainable option for me to invest in with our 401k plan? And if not, you know, what steps can we take to get there? So I'll wrap with that. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you, Will. And it's, I hope that the rest of everybody in the meeting, Will was still supposed to talk a lot about the ESG. So if you have any questions, please collect them, send them in the link we shared a few times, and then maybe we can still get a chance to ask Will after our last speaker. Our last speaker is, let's see, Stefania. Stefania is the founder of Physis, and she is on a mission. This woman really wants to empower investors to make an impact with their investments on sustainability and ESG related investments. And she will tell you how she does this and hopefully also why. Stefania, please come to the floor. You're still on mute.
Amy, I think Stefania said you need to unmute her.
Oh, okay. I think she's unmuted now, right? Hello. Are you with us? Ah, great. Thank you so much.
Hi guys. Good. Sorry.
Okay, then I'll leave you in good hands, Stefania.
Yeah, and I think the problem was that I signed up with 2 profiles. So hello, I'm very happy to be here today, especially because one of my team members, Steven, is so active with oikos, and one of my professors, Vargas, is as well. So thank you for having me today. Let me share my screen. Okay, this is funny. You got to allow me to share my screen with the other profile. I'm sorry for this confusion, guys. But as you have started discussing about my background, guys, I want to let you know that I have been a sustainable analyst at Sustainalytics, and I also been a fund manager. I was actually the first impact investing fund manager in Europe. Even if I was pretty young, I was one of the first to believe in integrating sustainable principles into investment decision. Am I allowed to share now? Let's see. Yes. Awesome. So, and right now I am the proud funder of a startup that wants to empower everyone in this call to invest also a small amount of money in sustainable companies. Why I'm doing what I'm doing. When I started over 10 years ago and I was just a student, people did not talk about sustainable investing. Some investors were discussing about ethical investment. And look what has been happening now. We have over 30 trillion of assets invested in sustainable products, mostly in Europe, over 14 trillion, and then 11 in the US. And this is a trend that keeps growing. And so many people think it's the real future of investing, especially because millennials really care about sustainable investing. And I guess everyone here today wants to invest their money in a responsible way. We see the distribution between retail and institutional. So the previous speaker discussed about what an institutional investor is and what they're looking for in their investment strategies, and also what an individual investor is. The distribution of the sustainable investment right now is mostly in the hand of institutional investors. But I know for sure that this is going to change pretty soon, as more and more individuals have access to investment tools like the one I'm building, and more individuals are also becoming aware of the potential of sustainable investing. I discuss about millennials, but by millennials, I mean pretty much everybody who is in the young generation, not just the pure millennials, also everyone who is under 40. They want to invest in sustainable investing, over 85% of them. And 90% believe that by investing in sustainability, they are not giving up a return, but they're actually making a better performance and a sustainable and positive impact. This is key because, guys, few years ago, people were not aware of this. And also thanks to organizations like oikos, people are becoming aware of what actually the potential of sustainable investing is. The only thing that is missing right now are tools to empower these people to really make a difference with their money. And indeed, 65%, they declare that there is a lack of availability of financial products, or there are some type of barriers for them to invest. We have found out at Physis, which, as I said before, is my startup, that everybody who has less than $200,000 to invest here in the state is rejected by financial advisors, which basically means that they don't have a way to invest their money, even if it's a small amount, like $6,000 or $500,000, and they cannot invest those money in a sustainable way. So that's one of the reasons why we decided to build Physis, to empower those people to really make a difference with their money. As we progress into this idea of the background of why we're doing what we're doing, there is a little bit of a difference between what the general population thinks about sustainable investing and what millennials think. Of course, millennials are way more towards sustainable investing than the general population, but this difference is smaller than we would expect, as you can see from this graph. And by the way, all these data are from Morgan Stanley. So it's a really great paper. If you want, I can send you the link. Take a look at it. It gives you a great overview of what is happening and what is the perception right now of sustainable investing. What are the key topics that people want to see when it comes to investing in a responsible way? Plastic, climate change, community development, sustainable goals, gender diversity, all key topics that will definitely help us to make a big difference. If you wonder how, through investing in sustainable companies, you can make a difference, the process is very, very simple. If we invest in companies that do provide gender diversity, that do have solution to reduce plastic pollution, then those companies are going to make a huge impact on the world, right? It's a positive loop. As you invest in a good company, that company is going to provide value for the environment and society, and you are going to get back money. So it's key to understand how this process works. When it comes to why we should do this, more and more people are buying organic food, right? So our consumer activities needs to be aligned to our investment activities. And right now, even if people want to, they are not yet. But there are plenty of tools or companies that can help you do that. And it's important that you become aware that it's a possibility. Last, when it comes to giving you guys an overview, is that more and more people don't just want to claim that they are investing sustainable, they want to see proof of the impact that they are making. And this is a huge problem, because even if there are some sustainable products, some sustainable portfolios that do help you invest in good companies, nobody is really providing you a concrete and tangible proof that you are making a difference. And that's where we at Physis comes in. We are on a mission, as you have said before, to help everybody achieve financial wealth and make a positive impact. And we don't just tell that, we do provide you the tools. More and more people do want to see what's the environmental and social outcome of their investments, but there are no tools out there that help you with this. We do, and we help everybody in this call to really make a difference with your money. It's very simple, the process that on Physis, you sign up, you answer a few questions about your financial needs, and you select the sustainable development goals that you most care about. We identify together your risk profile. The outcome is that we give you a simple way of investing for a very convenient fee. And you have your portfolio aligned with your sustainable belief. And most importantly, you can really see how your portfolio differs from market benchmark on different indicators, not just the main one like the E, the S, and the G, but also on community engagement, on education, on gender diversity, which, for example, is, as you can imagine, as a young female in finance, an indicator that I really care about. When you go in specific into looking at one of those indicators, you do have a tangible proof of what are the companies that are performing best on this matter. Right now, there are plenty of robo-advisors, but there are no robo-advisors that really combine sustainability proof and portfolio customization like we are trying to build here at Physis. Something we are also very, very proud is that we have started engaging with users like you on social media. Mostly Stephen is in charge of this. And we are creating a community where people are sharing their ideas. They're engaging with us about the posts and the videos that we share with them. And it's been such a rewarding process, especially because we have over 90,000 views per month that people that like and share and click about what we do. So we see this is hot. Like, People love it, and it's the right time, it's the right moment, especially when it comes to what is going to be next after this virus. More and more people understand that climate change is a huge issue. We have seen how, due to this isolation and stop of production, emission dropped incredibly. In Italy, guys, which is where I'm from, you know, the beautiful Venice, water, it's so polluted because people are moving back and forth, that as being ages since we could actually see a clear water with fishes. And now you see pictures on the web with fishes getting and a clear water in the center of Venice, which is amazing. We are really harming the environment, and we should stop. Sustainable investing is a key solution. How long do I still have?
Well, technically, we're already a bit over, so I'm
okay. I'm gonna just stop saying. Okay, I'm just gonna stop and saying two things. So, we are very proud of what we're doing at Physis. We are helping both individual investor and institutional investors. We are regulated by the SEC. This is my core team, as you can recognize, Stephen. Please, if you want to know more, reach out to us, and also start signing up on our platform, because soon we will release the final version, and you can really start investing with us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Stefania. That was really interesting. And as a fellow millennial, thank you very much. The link she mentioned, Stephen has already shared. So for those who are waiting for it, just scroll up a bit. For now, please tell me the questions that you have, put them in the app, and I hope that we can take it from there. Guys, I hope you're all ready for your Q&A. Will, James, please all get off mute just in case. Stefania, you too. I would like to start, or maybe James, you can answer, or maybe one of the others. Me, as being in Europe and being very busy with regulation, Europe is very much struggling with what is the definition of sustainability. When are you allowed to call it a sustainable investment and when not? And they're actually trying to build regulation around it. So how would you advise that? How do you define it?
Thank you, and I'm happy to hear what the others have to say as well. It's been hard to define. Man, I mean, just over the past few years, corporate social responsibility, socially responsible investing, sustainable investing, socially responsible, sustainable investing. There's been so many different acronyms and so many different meanings behind that. It is hard to define, but what I do like defining sustainability as sustainability, and it having three components, just like what I had said before on previous slides, and Willa pointed it out, and Stefania had also pointed it out. ESG, so sustainability is defined through environmental impact, social impact, and governance. Now, the tricky part is, okay, well, what qualifies as that? That's still really hard to do, but organizations are out there that are trying to create ways to at least provide benchmarks against other companies or other impact areas that help you determine whether a company is at least more sustainable than another company. So at least there is something out there that gives you an idea of, particularly from an investment standpoint. I'll just do an example. Is Morgan Stanley more sustainable than JP Morgan? There are products out there and there are rankings out there that help us define, that help us better identify through the lens of environmental social governance, which one is acting more sustainably. But Will,
James, or maybe Will, what would be the metrics you would use for this on these standardizations and how to say if something is ESG? Can you maybe, how does your organization do that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll chime in from the standpoint just to maybe take the first question first, and then I can briefly touch on the second. Related to definitions of responsible investment or sustainability, particularly in the context of retirement plans, there are legislative bodies that set these standards. And that's certainly been a tailwind in places like the EU and the UK. and it has been a headwind in places like the US for integration of sustainability within retirement plans. As it relates to the EU, there was a directive, IORP2, which essentially said all pensions and retirement plans ought to integrate ESG considerations into their retirement plans, and similar kinds of directives in the UK. The United States, the responsible party is the Department of Labor, and the governing body is essentially ERISA, and ERISA plans, employee-sponsored retirement systems, basically has issued guidance that has not been entirely clear around whether ESG considerations are permissible or not in retirement plans. So in the context of retirement plans, that's really, we look to the legislative bodies to define that. And to the extent that we're able to cooperate with those legislative bodies and avoid litigation, we'll support our clients in integrating responsible investment.
Thank you. I'm also going through the questions that everybody has sent us so far. I hope I can use most of them, but please, guys, if you have any questions, put them in the app, because otherwise I have too many sources to pull from. I think the one that is very popular at the moment, that's a bit for you, Stefania. They ask, how can we as private individuals promote sustainable investments and divestments and make it more mainstream aside from governmental action? So what else is very important besides governmental action?
So two questions. The first one about the definition. Personally, this is my my response. I don't think having a definition will make such a difference, guys. Also because things keep changing. So as long as people are trying to integrate sustainable criteria into investment decisions, then to what extent is right, to what extent is not right, it really depends on asset class and asset strategy. So I'm personally against specific definition or framework, because they will just create even more confusion to my from my experience. Your second question was what people can do. So the first thing is people can start getting more information about sustainable investing, what it is, what it means. And second, they can go either to a financial advisor and ask to start investing in sustainable funds, which they can do. There is also a big option for most of 401k now to switch to sustainable investing, or they can go to companies. If you don't have enough money, like people that can go to a financial advisor, you can go to robo-advisors like me. There are also other competitors like CoinInvest, for example, and you can start investing your money aligned with your values. So there are new options. I would really recommend two things. Google, trying to find more information so you can become more aware, and trying to find robo-advisor or financial advisor that can help and support your decisions.
Okay, thank you. And some of the questions I feel we sort of already slightly covered. So if yours is high on the ranking and I'm not mentioning it, don't be insulted, please. It's just because I think we've already mentioned it at one point. So the next one I want to pick out is, would one of you be able to say how you weigh the ESGs from an environmental impact?
Amy, can you repeat the question, please? Sorry.
Sorry, of course. Let's see, what did I say? It's moving a bit, the screen, so my apologies. How are ESGs weighing different environmental impacts?
So I'll tell you what we kind of do. Again, it's hard to get an absolute value nowadays. So when I'd say one of the biggest thing that my clients come to me, and it's almost universal: lower my carbon footprint, get me out of fossil fuels. It's like, okay, I can do that, but what what I can't necessarily do is tell you how much carbon reduction from an absolute, how many metric tons of carbon have I reduced your portfolio by? That's really hard to determine. There is an organization out there called the Carbon Disclosure Project. And what they do is they aggregate companies' carbon footprint, but it's also self-policing. From my understanding, a corporation elects to provide their carbon information, and then the Carbon Disclosure Project uses that information. Well, some of the programs that I use also use that information, but because you can't really find an absolute term based on a portfolio basis, and maybe you could. I mean, I'm not a computer scientist. I'm certainly not a mathematician or a statistician, you know, from the degree that you probably need it in order to do this. But what I do like to look at is the concept of carbon intensity, which Sustainalytics uses. And it's basically, what is your carbon footprint compared to your revenues? And have I decreased that? So if your revenue is high, if your carbon footprint is high and your revenues, the revenues that you generate are in direct alignment with your carbon footprint, and we try to reduce that as much as we can. It's like the slide that I did before. I wish I could give you an absolute, you know, term to say, well, hey, listen, I dropped your carbon footprint by 50, you know, metric tons or something like that. That'd be great. But what I certainly can do with a high degree of certainty, say, okay, well, your carbon intensity dropped by 50%. Your energy investments in energy went from 10% down to 1%. That's still reducing carbon footprint regardless. And if you think about it, it's like, okay, well, I just reduced, if you were at 10% and down to 1%, I reduced your carbon footprint by 90%. So it's still in the end, it's still a good way of reducing your carbon footprint, as an example.
Thank you. I think that was very clear. I see a lot of questions coming by that all have to do with, yeah, how to measure and how to quantify. And I think that is one of the things that a lot of people are busy with. So yeah, maybe we can go also slightly in a different way. One of the questions I come by is, what do you guys think about the certification of the PRI, for instance? And for those who don't know the PRI, maybe Will, maybe you can explain for those who are not aware of it.
Happy
and Stefania is still on mute too. I see her
sorry.
trying to get her attention.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I just want to follow up on what he discussed right now, because it's very, very important to understand how to measure something. Okay. So carbon emissions are one of the key metrics for environmental score in the ESG, okay? And first, it's important to understand that 95% of all the metrics that we have to assess sustainability at a company level, those metrics comes from self-reporting. So it's not just for the CDP data that you were referring to. 95% of the data that we get are self-reporting from companies. And most of those companies use GRI metrics or IRC to report on their sustainable activities. So when we take a metrics like carbon emission, I personally think it's wrong to try to use that metrics and compare by revenue. You should do, for example, by production, because some companies might have a higher revenue because they kind of make revenue in different ways than other companies. They just have a different business model, so they might have a lower or higher revenue. So if you divide the carbon emission by production, you have a more accuracy data, the data more detail that really tells you exactly what is happening. Now, why I wanted to discuss this, impact metrics are key. We don't have yet methodology that are accepted worldwide to really measure the impact. But 3 years ago, we were not even having this conversation. So it's important that, especially most of these people in this conversation are students, right? So it's very important that everybody tries to study and find new solutions to use sustainable metrics to assess impact, but you also have to do it in the right way. So personally, divided the carbon emission by revenue, I don't think is a correct metrics. By production, so the level of production, it might be a better way. And this is just an example. Sorry.
We look at production too, actually. We look at production too. So.
Yeah, it's there's so many options. I know from my own work, it can be quite difficult. Will, would you mind responding to the PRI question as our last question from our viewers?
Absolutely, sure. So the PRI is the Principles for Responsible Investment. It was a UN or United Nations backed initiative that came to fruition in 2005, 2006, I believe. And Mercer has a deep relationship with the PRI. We were hired as the investment consultant to support the development of the Principles for Responsible Investment and what that actually means. And so that was actually, as it happens, the genesis of our team, of our responsible investment team. That's really where our, the first individuals who started our responsible investment team, that was their first project and initiative. So essentially the PRI, or the Principles for Responsible Investment, lays out 6 key principles that investors abide by. You can look it up on the site exactly what those commitments are. Essentially, it's around transparency and reporting, and a commitment to furthering the responsible investment landscape. To answer the question directly, how do we feel kind of about signatories and that status? When we're looking at investment managers, it's definitely something that's important to us because it speaks to the willingness to disclose climate-related risks, particularly now that the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, those recommendations are integrated into the annual reporting that is required of signatories to the PRI. So I think by and large, when we're looking at investment managers that are suitable for our clients' portfolios, one of the things that we will look at is the PRI. And we will look at when the asset manager signed the PRI, because as this space evolves and becomes very popular, a lot of asset management firms are signing. So all to say, it's a very legitimate initiative. One thing to look out for is how involved is an asset manager in the PRI. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Will. That's actually a very good coincidence that Mercer had to do with that. I had no idea. I would like to thank all our speakers for your time and commitment. And of course, I would like to thank everybody for tuning in and being with us for the last hours. Thank you for your questions. And I hope to meet, link in some kind of way to everybody who's been here today. And for those on this side of the world, have a great evening. For those back in America, have a great afternoon. And yeah, have a good weekend all.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Amy, for sharing. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Yep,
thank you, Will, Stefania, and James, and thank you very much, Amy, for facilitating a wonderful conversation and discussion. We will have a next session on this webinar starting. We'll just take a 5-minute break to make sure that people who need to go get a drink of water or something can just do that. We will start in 5 minutes with our next session, which will be on networking and just having a conversation about the day and what we've learned. Thank you very much to all of the presenters of this last session. We'll meet in 5 minutes.